in our agency, we have to respond to dead body calls. People die, and you're not quite sure what caused the death. So they'll send out police officers sometimes if it's suspicious. And they'll send us out, and we will take a look at the body and see, is it a murder, or do they die some other way? And when we get dispatched to these calls, these are called DBRs, dead body reports. So a couple of years ago, our officers were dispatched to a dead body report, and they recognized the address because this lady, who was now supposedly dead in her bed, this lady was a pretty committed drug addict, and they had known her for years. I knew her because I had arrested her for bank robbery, okay? She was also a bank robber. And she was a heroin addict, and when they got there, this was her nightstand. Next to her bed, her body was in the bed. I'll give you a close-up. So you can see this is her, she's a heroin addict, so these are her needles. 1, 2, 3. She cooks the heroin on the bottom of this can using this water. Sometimes it gets messy. This is her blood. She also, though, because it's a depressant, and so it's hard for her to function, so she also smokes rock cocaine simultaneously. These are her rock pipes. You can kind of see them all around here. Look, if you do those two things in combination, bad stuff happens. So what do you think the officers, when they got there, they see this, she's dead in her bed, they've known her to be a drug addict for years. What do you think the most reasonable assumption is? Overdose, right? So they call the coroner. The coroner is going to send out an investigator who basically is like a body collector. They're going to collect her body and take it to the coroner's office where they'll do a toxicology to see what she died from. And they're waiting for them to get, because it's Los Angeles County, that takes a while, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. Officers are standing around waiting for the coroner's investigator. The coroner's investigator gets there, sees this, pulls down the blankets, and sees that she's been stabbed to death. It's not an overdose, it's a murder. But the officers never even bothered to pull down the blanket. Why? Well, because they thought they knew the answer before they started. If you think you know the answer to something before you start, good chance you're going to miss it. Either you're going to get the wrong assumption or inference, or you're just not even going to look for any further evidence because you think you know the answer already. One of the first things I teach young investigators is don't be a know-it-all. Don't think you know everything before you start investigating. Make sense? Well, I want to start here because I'm trying to figure out not what is possible. We talked yesterday that possible doesn't matter. It's about what's reasonable. The reasonable inference beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard. It's the standard of proof in criminal trials. But the question is, how do you determine what's reasonable? And that's what we're going to do this morning. So I'm about to show you something gruesome, a dead body. It looks like my son, doesn't it? Because it is my son. He's posing for me here. Let's say we found this guy in a room. He's on the ground. He's dead. How do I know what kind of death this is? How do I know this is not a crime scene? It might just be a death scene. Not every death scene is a crime scene. There are 4 ways to die. How do I know which way he died? Well, here's how we do it. We make 2 lists that begin with an E. The first list is a list of evidence. The second list is a list of explanations. Any possible explanation. Okay, so we just list the evidence, and right now we do have some evidence. We have a dead guy laying face down. Okay, how do we explain those kind of people? Well, there are 4 ways to explain dead guys laying face down. Could have died by natural causes, could have died by some form of an accident, could have committed suicide, or could have been killed by somebody else. Those are the 4 ways that people die. So here's what we're going to do. Let's cross off the one that seems least reasonable right now. So which one of these can we cross off as the least reasonable? Go. Which one? Number 1? Well, if he had a heart attack, he would look like that, right? So I can't cross off a natural. Go. Okay, so 2 is accidental. If he accidentally took too many pills, he would look like this. Heck, if he intentionally took too many pills, he'd look like this. If I poisoned him with too many pills, he'd look like this. Do you see how right now I cannot cross out anything? All 4 are equally reasonable because he would look just like this under all 4 of those scenarios. But let's change the scenario. What if he's a dead guy laying face down, but now he's in a pool of his own blood center torso? Would that change things? So let's add that to our evidence list. What can I cross out now? Natural, right? Now look, he's bleeding from center torso. Otherwise, it'd be around his head. I can see you bleeding out of an opening in your head. But what is the natural opening in your chest that you're going to bleed out of? I can't think of what it could be. Is it possible? Yes, but it's not reasonable, and that's why I can cross out natural. But until I roll him over and see what this injury is, I really can't cross out anything else. So let's change this scenario. What if he's a dead guy, laying face down, in a pool of his own blood, center torso? Why are you so quiet? How should we change this? Let's put a big honking knife in his back. How does that sound? Does that sound good to you? Sounds good to me. Listen, if you didn't want to see a homicide, you shouldn't have come to a homicide investigator talking about this, right? Let's change this now and add the knife in the back. I can cross out accidental now, can I? I mean, how is he going to accidentally back into that knife in a vertical position? But it is within his reach, so I'm going to leave in suicide right now. Let's change our scenario. What if he's got multiple stab wounds on his upper back? That's kind of hard to execute on your own, right? He can't even reach his upper back. Now I think we can cross out suicide. Does that make sense? All that's left. Now, imagine if we had bloody footprints leading out of the room. We would for sure know it's kind of hard to walk out of the room in your own footprints. So that now we know is a homicide. Now just so you know, I'm illustrating this. No one died in order to do this. My son's still alive. He went to UCLA. I went to UCLA. We're Bruins. My son David went to USC, University of Southern California. So he's a communist, okay? We don't even talk to that guy. But just so you know, Jimmy is still alive. He's now working these same kinds of investigations. Now, this process we just used is a process that's known as abductive reasoning. I just taught you a logical reasoning skill. Abductive reasoning is simply inferring to the most reasonable explanation based on the evidence. Abductive reasoning. Why am I showing you this? Not just to entertain you. I'm showing you this because this is exactly how I approach the most important piece of evidence in the Christian worldview. I told you yesterday that I was not really interested in Jesus, but as I was reading through the Gospels, I said, hey, you know what? If there's one piece of evidence for the Christian worldview that I could use to debunk the Christian worldview, it would be the resurrection of Jesus. And how would I investigate that? Well, I could use the exact same approach. We could use this approach, and I think it's an important approach because Paul says right here in 1 Corinthians 15 that if this is not true, all of Christianity is false, and you're to be pitied because you believed liars who lied to you about the resurrection. I needed to know, is this a reasonable inference? Well, how am I going to know this? Well, I had to make two lists, a list of evidence and a list of explanations. So what kind of evidence is going to be in the room? Well, I think I'll tell you what I thought as an atheist. Remember, I was a very committed atheist. But I would have agreed to 4 things about the resurrection. Here's what I would have said. Okay, I believe that Jesus lived and he died on a cross and was buried. I'm not a Jesus myther. Okay, I believe he actually lived. But so what? This could be true and Christianity could still be false. All kinds of people, even today, are executed on crosses and buried. This does not make Christianity true. Also, I would have said the tomb is empty because if it's not empty, look, if you want to end Christianity in the first 2 weeks, let me tell you how you do it. You get the body of Jesus and you drag it around town. That will end it immediately. Or you get the people who say he's alive still to recant. Neither one of those 2 things happened. But this does not make Christianity true. These things could be true. I could empty the tomb out, okay? There's other ways to explain an empty tomb. So these 2 things could be true, and I believe these were true as an atheist, but I still believe that Christianity was false. I also believe that these people said they saw the risen Christ. So what? This could be true, and Christianity could still be false. People say all kinds of crazy things. And yes, they were willing to die for their claims, but so what? People die. I would have given you these 4 things, but I still believe that Christianity was false. You know why? Because I thought there were better ways to explain these 4 things. As a matter of fact, the explanations I would have given you was one of 6 explanations for those 4 things that atheists offer. I'm going to list them here on the wall. There are a total of 7 ways to explain these 4 truths. That's it. I don't know there's an 8th way. If there was, I would have looked at it. The only question is which of these 7 explanations actually makes sense of the evidence. So here's what I decided to do. Same thing I do at death scenes. I'm going to look at the evidence, look at the explanations, cross off the explanations that don't work. Now, the bottom explanation is a Christian explanation. So this one right here is the Christian explanation. But I wasn't going to go there. I figured one of these top 6 would get it done. And so that's what I did. I just focused on those top 6. Let's just do a couple together because we don't have a limited amount of time. Here's the first one. Maybe they were wrong and Jesus isn't really dead on the cross, right? Because if he's not really dead, he's just badly beaten. He goes unconscious. You pull him off the cross. He recovers. He's back to life. Now you have a resuscitation, not a resurrection. He looks like he's back to life, but he was never dead to begin with. Now think about this. I made this case from your scripture. Here's where I did it. I was focused here on the Gospel of John. Look, 2 men were killed with Jesus at the same time. But when they came to collect the bodies, those 2 guys weren't dead. They had to break their legs to make sure they were dead. So why do you think Jesus is dead? If there's 3 on the cross, 2 aren't dead, why would you think, and did they break Jesus' legs to make sure he was dead? No. Okay, so he's not dead yet. Instead, they just stick him with a spear in the side. Really? People survive spears. So I would have said your own scripture demonstrates to me that Jesus is not really dead. Except this part down here bothered me. John, who's a fisherman, said that water came out of his side. What's with the water? I get this part. But what's with this part? You realize that people in the first centuries did not think that John was telling that truly? Christians who read this scripture were like, there's no water coming out of this dude's chest, okay? Why would water come out of his chest? You know why they didn't know? Because they didn't understand the science of death. It turns out that this is a hidden piece of science in scripture that even John didn't know. So John writes this, okay? And then everyone who reads it in the first 500 years is like, no, it couldn't be water. It's got to be some symbol of the baptism, some symbol of the Holy Spirit, some symbol of regeneration. It can't really be water. And all of the church fathers, older members of the church in the first 500 years, when they read this passage, and there they are, they said it's not water. Couldn't be water. Makes no sense. Well, they didn't understand the science. Look, if you've ever been at a car accident, where someone dies in front of you, or you've been at a murder scene, but it's not a murder, it's an assault scene. I get there and they die before I leave. You will see your body does weird things. Your body starts to shut down. That's called circulatory shock. It's trying to conserve energy for the most vital of organs. And if your heart stops, you have cardiac arrest, you're going to suffer one of 2 kinds of effusion. The first one's called pericardial effusion. That's where the water gathers around your heart. But if I stab your chest cavity, you're not going to see water. It's going to look like runny blood because your heart is being stabbed also. The odds of just that thin membrane, not good. But if you happen to be in the right position, water will accumulate in your lungs. That's called pleural effusion. And because that lung is like a sac that holds it separate from your body, if I stab that, you will see the water run out. But nobody knew this back in those days. And even the people who read John didn't know this. John probably didn't know this, but he saw it, so he recorded it. And now you have a piece of hidden science that demonstrates that Jesus' heart actually stopped. But even if you didn't have that, how many of you here have ever touched a dead body? Raise your hand. Some of you have, right? It happens. Some people in adult audiences, I will see people who are working in the professions where they touch dead people, okay? And if you've touched a dead person, you will know that it's not like the movies. It's not like TV. I can tell a dead person from across the room before I even get up on them. Death looks different. I want to teach it to you. Here's why I say this. In the first century, people understood what death looked like. Everyone had touched a dead body. You know why? No funeral homes. No coroners. You bury your own. You also midwife your own. You took all that care on your own. People in the first century would know what death looks like, but we don't. And that's why we think, oh, maybe he wasn't dead. Really? You think they're going to miss the signs of death? Let me teach you the signs of death. I'm going to take you to the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, okay? This is in downtown LA. You walk up this, and they just changed this, but it used to be you'd walk up come on now. You would walk up these stairs, go in this door, and there's a store right behind this window. I kid you not, it is the Los Angeles County Coroner's gift shop. They had a gift shop. And in that gift shop, you could buy T-shirts like this one. It closed last year. I'm like, really? I have a bunch of these. I'm glad I bought my T-shirts when I did. You can get a mouse pad that says, "We're dying for your business." Yeah, pretty tacky, right? But that's what that you can buy that stuff there. Now, I'm going to take you inside the coroner's office, because in the bottom, next door, there are the examination rooms. And I wish they looked like this. But they don't, because hundreds of bodies go through these offices every day. And the reason why they're metal is so you can wash them off. And all the blood goes down here. It's a disgusting, stinky place. I have to go to autopsies all the time. If I'm assigned a case, I have to go to the autopsy of the victim. And I go to these autopsies, and I have one suit that is just my autopsy suit, because it stinks so bad you cannot get it out of your suit. And believe it or not, there's a sign on the wall behind this clipboard that says, "No eating in the examination room." Like someone's going to eat in there, right? But people actually do. Now, I show you this because there's 3 things that happen to your body when your heart stops beating. I'm going to teach you. I think people in the first century taking Jesus off the cross, they would recognize this. But maybe you haven't thought about it. The first thing that happens is you start to cool down. You will not mistake a living person for a dead person, because dead people get cool to the touch pretty quickly. Pretty quickly. You can feel the difference. That is called algor mortis. This is the mortis triad. The second thing that happens is you start to get stiff. It's called rigor mortis. So if you are in a cross position and you're hanging there for a couple of hours, when we get there, your arms aren't just going to flop back down. Your arms are going to slowly decrease, or you have to push them down. Third thing that happens is probably the most telling. When I get to a crime scene and I roll the body over, if he's laying on his back, when your heart stops pushing blood, gravity starts to draw it. So you will begin to discolor. So I'll roll you over, your back will be discolored, like purple and red, because your blood is settling from the gravity. If you die on a cross, your feet will swell and turn purple. Do you really think that these people taking Jesus' body off the cross would have mistakenly wrapped a living person? Mistaking the living person for... No, this generation knew what death looked like. So is it possible? I always say yes, because anything is possible, but it's not reasonable, and that's why I cross it off. But hey, maybe they were just lying about this. I know some of you folks here like stories and movies about conspiracy theories. Right now, we have got a lot of conspiracy theories in our country. Raise your hand if you like conspiracy theories. Go ahead, raise them real high. Okay, everyone look at these guys. These are the stupid people, okay? Seriously, conspiracy theories? You guys believe conspiracy? Okay. You know how hard it is to pull off a successful conspiracy? If you think you're aware of a successful conspiracy, it wasn't successful by definition. Successful conspiracies nobody ever hears about, right? Okay, how many here have siblings? Raise your hand if you have a sibling. Okay, you have 3 siblings or more. Oh, got a couple. 4 siblings or more. 5 siblings or more. I see a couple still. 6 siblings or more. That means there's 7 of you. 6 siblings or more. I think we're right here. Okay. You have 6 siblings, right? How many siblings do you have? You have 8 siblings. Well, she's going to win, okay? She's just going to win. I have 6 siblings, okay? But I thought I was going to win. But no, you have 8. Okay, good for you. Okay. Have you ever lied to your parents? No. You're a liar right now. Okay. Okay. Do you want me to teach you how to get away with a lie with your parents? I'm going to teach all of you, but I'm going to use you as an example. I'll teach you guys how to lie to your parents. You ready? Here's how it works. It turns out to be successful in a lie, in a conspiracy with others, you need 5 things. I'm going to teach you the 5 things, okay? Here we go. First thing you need is you need the smallest number of co-conspirators. So you have 8 siblings. You do not need all 8 involved in the lie. Just involve 1. Okay, good. That's you know what I'm talking about. You already do that. Okay, good. That's good. So you want the small, it's easier for 2 people to lie than it is for 9. Okay? Also, you want to hold it for the shortest period of time. It's harder to tell a lie and keep a secret for a month than it is for a day. So here's my advice to you. You pick the sibling you're going to lie with, and as soon as you're done committing the lie, you have to kill your sibling. Because then it's over. That's a very short conspiracy. Are you not willing to kill your sibling? Yeah, are you willing to? No. Okay, well, I'm going to give you another strategy then. If you don't kill your sibling, you have to have excellent communication. Here's why. One of your parents is going to jam up one of you and say, hey, what's the deal with this? And he's going to start to question you, and you're going to offer a response. You better make sure your sibling knows exactly what you said to repeat the exact same response. That's why as a detective, what's the first thing we do when we have more than one suspect? We separate them before we do interviews because we want to catch them in a lie. So you have to be able to call your sibling and say, hey, I told them this. Make sure you say it the same way. Okay, you're nodding your head like you're good to go with this. Okay, good. 4th thing, you need the strongest possible relationship to do this well. So look, I've got 6 siblings, okay? I'll be honest with you, I like 2 of them, okay? The other 4, not so much, all right? You probably have a similar situation. There are people you're close to and people you're not. You pick the ones you're close to do the conspiracy. They're less likely to rat you off. Last thing, if you can avoid pressure from your parents, don't let them even start asking questions. Make sure whatever you do, you're so good at it, they don't even ask the first question. Now, I'm telling you this because if you think that the Christian story about the resurrection is a big, elaborate lie, a conspiracy, well, then the question has to be, do they possess those 5 things? Look, already there's too many people involved, if you ask me. It's not just James and John and Peter. It's not even just the 12. Acts 1 says in the upper room there were 120 who had seen the risen Christ. That's too many people. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15 there are 500 who saw the risen Christ on the same day that could be interviewed by the Corinthians. Really? Way too many. If all you did was tell me that was how many we started with, I'm going to say that's not a reasonable conspiracy. If you think that 500 people can keep a secret, you're crazy. But let's play the game of Clue. You guys ever played Clue? This is the original Clue board. This is when I was a kid, okay? This is the only Clue board that counts. Whatever Clue board you're using, it's stupid. This is the original, okay? Now, I'll make the game pieces. You know how this, I'll change the board a little bit. I'm going to make it that area around where Jesus did his ministry, okay? And the game pieces are going to be the disciples. Let's start playing. First of all, there's too many disciples. There are. But if you're thinking, well, maybe they only hold it for a short time. So how long are they holding the conspiracy? Is it 6 minutes, 6 hours, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years? No, it's 6 decades. You want me to believe that 500 plus people were able to keep a lie for several generations? Like no one at some point is going to say it's not worth it? Are you really? Okay, that's just crazy to me. But I get it. Maybe they had excellent communication. No, actually, they're not in this holy huddle here. They're all over the game board, okay? So this dude over here, Thomas, who's in India, has no idea what Matthew is saying in Africa or what Paul is saying over here. They can't Snapchat each other. They can't do this. How do you talk to each other? And you've played this game. There is significant pressure from the weapons, right? Here's the weapons in Clue. You guys know who this guy is here? Jack Bauer from 24, the old original 24 series. Nobody knows who that is anymore. Teachers, do you guys know who that is? Okay, what would Jack Bauer do to get to the truth? Whatever it took. And that's what was happening here. You don't think that these guys were torturing these guys? Yeah, they were. They're snapping off fingers here and saying, hey, dude, Matthew's already told us the truth. You better just tell us. Yet nobody ever breaks. Nobody ever changes their story. Weird. Also, if you think about it, there are some brothers here. You've got Peter and Andrew, John and James. But there's a guy here who's not related to anybody. He's not even a friend of anybody. He wasn't like part of the discipleship of John the Baptist, okay? He didn't know all the other guys. No, he was a guy who was an outcast that nobody wanted in the group, okay? They wouldn't even go to his house the night they invited him into his group. They didn't want to step foot in his house. This dude's name was Levi. He was a tax collector. He later became Matthew. He's this guy down here. Why in the world would he not hold on to this lie, allegedly, if he's not related to any of these people? He's not even their friends. Seriously? I mean, this to me is not reasonable. It's just too easy to break, especially given that nobody ever changed their story. So for me, is it possible? Anything is possible. I don't think it's reasonable. I cross it off. Oh, maybe they hallucinated it. You know, they wanted Jesus to be alive. And a lot of the early stories, you know, are just one-on-ones. Like, for example, Mary sees Jesus in the garden at the tomb. And she wants Jesus to be alive. And at first she says, oh, here's the gardener in the tomb, in the garden. And then she goes, oh, it's not the gardener, that's Jesus. No, Mary, it's the gardener. You just think it's Jesus because you want him to be alive and you're by yourself. And other people are by themselves, like Peter here. He's by himself, at least in these two episodes in Scripture. He doesn't want Jesus. Maybe he's hallucinating this too. And you got people like, you know, James. He didn't treat his brother all that well while he was alive. So, you know, maybe he just wanted it and he's by himself. But Paul sees Jesus by himself. He's with two other people on the road to Damascus, but the two other people don't see Jesus. He's the only one who sees Jesus. Okay, wait a minute. Do you think that Paul wants Jesus to be alive? And that's why he's seeing this? Paul was executing Christians. This doesn't make any sense here. And then it gets weirder because you have accounts, multiple accounts where more than one person sees the risen Christ and tells the story for years to follow. Like on the road to Emmaus, you have at least two. Look, if I told you I had a dream, and I was driving down Mulholland in Los Angeles, and I'm in a Tesla, and in my dream, and you said, oh yeah, it was a red Tesla. I'm like, how do you know what color the Tesla was? Yeah, beige ragtop, you had the top down. How do you know that? You were listening to music, Ed Sheeran. How do you know that? Like, how would you know what is in my dream? That would freak me out, right, if you know my dreams. We don't have group dreams, okay? The things you have as a group are called memories. So when two people are recalling the exact same details, it bugs me. And this happens over and over again. You have the Marys, right? They actually recite the same thing at the tomb. There's 3 of them. Here there's 7 at the lake. I couldn't even get them all on the same screen. Okay, I tried to. Couldn't all fit. So there's 2 over here. Okay. They all see the same thing. Remember the upper room? No Judas, no Thomas. So we have 10 here who see the same thing at the same time. That bothers me. Then later on, Thomas comes back, and now he joins their group, and now we have several of these where you have at least the 11. That bothers me. This episode here at the mountaintop, I'm not even sure how many. It's not clear if it's just the 12 or if it's all the other. Remember, there's 120 in the upper room who had seen the risen Christ. I don't know how many are here. It's at least, though, the 11. It's at least those. Then there's this episode here where he's going to ascend into heaven. By the way, forget about the resurrection for a second. What if Jesus never died on a cross, he never rose from the grave, but at the end of his ministry, he rose into the air and ascended into heaven? Would that be enough for you? I'm thinking that's pretty much enough for me. If this even happened, I'm in. I think a lot of people in this room, if you have doubts, if you saw this dude just ascend into heaven, you would go, well, I'll tell you what, I think I'm in now. Do you want to see it? I can make believers of all of you right now. Are you ready? Whoop, there he goes. Okay, so you should all be believers right now because you just saw the ascension of Jesus, okay? And so did all those people. At least 11 who saw that. Probably more. Finally, Paul says there are 500 who saw the risen Christ. Of course, I can't count all these people. We'll try. But there's a lot more than I can show you here. As a matter of fact, there's like 450 more over there and there, okay. But there, you get the idea. There's a lot of people here who see the same thing. And by the way, if you wanted to falsify this, oh, I don't believe you had a vision, you had a hallucination. That's not true. It's pretty simple to falsify it. Just go back to the tomb. If I imagined the resurrection, there'll be a body in the tomb. If there's no body in the tomb, now I'm back to conspiracy theory. Somebody had to steal the body out. And you already know why I reject conspiracy theories. This is why Paul puts it this way. He says, folks, we're not making this, not Paul, Peter, we're not making this stuff up. It's not a cleverly designed story. It's actually what just happened. We saw it. We were eyewitnesses of his majesty. So for me, is it possible? Anything's possible. It's not reasonable, though. I crossed it out. Let me go one more before I wrap this for you guys. Maybe they were fooled by an imposter. You remember, after Jesus comes out of the grave, he appears to look a little bit different. And so like the people on the road to Emmaus, they don't immediately recognize him. Mary does not immediately, well, yeah, because he's an imposter who's pretending to be Jesus. Do you guys know who this is? Adults in the room, do you guys know who that is, teachers? This dude's name is Charles Ponzi. Ponzi schemes are named after Charles Ponzi. He's a con man. You ever heard the expression a con man? You know why we call them con men? Because they have the confidence of the people they're lying to. So you need two things to con people. You need the confidence. You need to know them well enough that they trust you. And you have to know more about the con than they do. You have to have better knowledge about if I'm trying to fool you into a business deal, if you know a lot about business, you'll know I'm lying to you right away because you know more about the business than I do. I have to know more than you. So if you're telling me that there is somebody out here who was able to con the disciples, they would also need these two things: the confidence of the disciples and know more about Jesus than they do. That means it's probably going to be somebody from the inner circle who was there to hear everything Jesus said so he could sound like Jesus later. So who's that going to be? And they're going to need help because we've got to get that empty tomb thing done, okay? So I'm just kind of trying to figure out who this could be. The problem I have with this is that the Jesus after the resurrection is every bit as miraculous as the Jesus. This has got to be a really good con man because he has to do all the magic too. He has to appear miraculously. He has to perform miracles. He has to ascend into heaven miraculously. Really? You think a con man did that? This to me is a weak explanation. But if you ask me, is it possible? I'm always going to say yes. I just don't think it's reasonable. So I crossed it. Do I have time to do one more? I'm going to skip to this next one here. I'm going to skip one. By the way, I'm going to send you all this. That link I gave you yesterday includes this talk. So you'll get all that. All right. This one we talked about yesterday. It's the last one. Were they distorted? In other words, is this a late legend? Jesus lived, but there's no resurrection because that is a late legend. That part's not true about Jesus. Now, you already know that it's not, this is pretty easy to overcome because to be a late legend, you need two things. You need to be late and a legend. But you already know from yesterday that it's not late. Remember, I showed you that timeline. It's early. It's an early story. The resurrection is part of the very first ever recorded documents related to Christianity. And it's not a legend because we traced it over time. Do you remember? That chain of custody shows us that it didn't change over time. So this, to me, if someone told me it's a late legend, I'm going to say, no. There's no way it's a late legend because it's neither late nor distorted. So this, to me, if you said, is it possible? I might say it. I don't think I can say this one's possible. This one is such a stretch. Now I'm going to go to the last one. This is the Christian explanation. The Christian explanation is simply that those are telling the truth. Those documents are telling, okay, look, every explanation has strengths and weaknesses. Even the true explanation. When I do a trial in front of a jury, I know that my case has some weaknesses, and I know what they are, and I try to protect the jury from the weaknesses in the case, even though I know it's true. Even in cases where afterwards the suspect confesses, I will tell you that there are weaknesses in the case. Complications, things that aren't that clear. I wish I had a better witness for this or for that. I know the weaknesses. These explanations, I think, have weaknesses that are deal killers. But don't think for a second that your Christian explanation doesn't have a weakness, because it does. The weakness the Christian explanation has kept me out of Christianity for a lot of years. Now, I will give you this. The Christian explanation does best explain those four things we're trying to explain. Those four things we're trying to explain are absolutely reasonable if, in fact, he rose from the grave. But I would have said, here's the weakness in your case. The weakness in your case is that it requires a resurrection in the first place. Think about it. You want me to believe that the most reasonable explanation is that a guy returns from the grave. That's just stupid. No way. I don't believe in supernatural things. If it can't be explained with space, time, matter, physics, and chemistry, I'm out. This would have to be something outside of space, time, matter, physics, and chemistry. I'm out. Yeah, but Jim, this is the thing we are investigating. This is the question. Here's the question even better put. We're trying to figure out, are supernatural events ever the most reasonable explanation? Nope. No. We're investigating that claim. You can't start off by saying, no, you haven't investigated it yet. Don't care. Don't believe in the supernatural. No, wait a minute. Now, if you take that attitude, where you're going to try to tell me before we even start that the claim is false or true, like you're not even going to look at the evidence. You're just going to say, nope, don't believe that. That is so stupid. Think about it. I'll show you some evidence. I'll show you how early the documents are. Don't care. Don't believe in supernatural junk. Well, I could show you, how often they're quoted, but don't care. Don't believe in the supernatural. Well, I could show you archaeology. Don't care. And if I have this attitude, no matter what I show you, you will find a way to jump over it because you are determined to get to this end. And the reason why you're determined to get to that end is because that's where you started and you don't want to move. So no matter what I do, you're just going to end up where you started. That is not reasonable. You're not listening or looking at the evidence because you think you know the answer before you started. Why do you think I showed you this nightstand? I showed you this nightstand because these officers thought they knew the answer before they started, they would not move, and they missed it. Whatever you do in this room, if you're just here because your parents make you go here, you're not even part of a church that you want to be part of. You don't even believe any of this nonsense. I get it. But do not think you know the answer before you at least look at the evidence. Look, in the end, it's going to come down to two things. Either Jesus rose from the grave or he didn't. Simple. If he did, Christianity is true. If he didn't, it's not true. Now, I'll tell you as an atheist, if you want me to look at all the possible explanations, including the supernatural ones, well, of course, I'd have to in order to get over there. Nope, not doing that because I don't believe in the supernatural. That prevented me from getting to that conclusion. But to be honest, if you look at all the other possible explanations, they don't work. They have their own obstacles. I didn't care. I would have found a way to dig under these, to go around these, to go through these, jump over them, whatever I have to do to get over here. Because I wanted to be here. I didn't care that none of these explanations work. And by the way, when you see people offer you 6 explanations, there's a reason why they're offering 6. They know they don't work. Dude who holds number 5 does not believe that number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 6 works. Dude who holds number 3 does not believe 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 work. There's so many explanations on this side because everyone knows they don't work. I didn't care. Now take a look at this for a second. Which of these two paths is least encumbered? Which of these two paths has the least number of obstacles? And by the way, there's only one obstacle on the other side, and I put it there. I could easily take it down. This is about my bias against the supernatural. Don't care, I'm not taking it down. I don't believe in the supernatural. If I take it down, do you see how wide open this is? There's only one thing in my way, and it ends up being my bias. So let me tell you how I handled this, okay? I don't have a slide for that. I want to tell you how I overcame it. As an atheist, I believed in what's called Big Bang cosmology. That the entire universe came into existence instantaneously in the distant past. Because all of the science, honestly, points to that conclusion. I stayed there very dramatically. That was my stake in the ground. Now, what that says, that science tells us that all things in the universe, all space, time, and matter came into existence from nothing. There was no spatial void and then the universe appeared. No, space is not nothing. Space is something. There was no space before space. There was nothing before space. How can that be? What do we mean by nothing? Aristotle put it this way. It's what rocks dream about. Nothing. That means if there's no space, time, and matter before space, time, and matter, I'm looking for a first cause outside of space, time, and matter, which is the natural world. I'm looking for a cause that's non-spatial, non-material, non-temporal. That's the first cause. So that first cause is already outside of nature because nature doesn't exist until space, time, and matter, operated on by physics and chemistry, emerges. So I thought to myself, wait a minute, hold on. I already believe in at least one thing that's outside of nature, that's supernatural, that whatever that first cause is. And so if that first cause happens to be a personal being, do you think it will be like small potatoes to walk on water, small potatoes to do resurrection? The most dramatic miracle in Scripture, if this is true, is Genesis 1. Everything from nothing. And I realized, wow, this is a bias I'm holding. Really, I already believe in at least one extranatural, supranatural cause. So I pulled it down. And then it was pretty clear. At some point I realized the only thing standing between me and the resurrection, me and the cross of Jesus, was me. For some of you in this school, that is your situation too. You're here, you feel like I don't even want to be here sometimes, I get it. School is school sometimes. This is a great school though. But maybe your parents are sending you here and you're not even sure that any of this is true. It may not be a problem with the worldview. It may not be a problem with the Scripture. It may not be a problem with the claim. It might be a you problem. That's what it was for me. So I want to encourage you to open up your minds to the other possibilities. Now, I'm going to send you all this stuff, as I said yesterday, from our website, where I talked to you about our phone app. We also have a show on NRB TV every week, twice a week, and a YouTube channel where we archive everything. So you can go on our YouTube channel and catch all this. And remember, you're going to text me the word detective at 66866. That's how you do it. Send a new text to that number with that word, detective, and I will send you all the rest. Now look, we have, and we did this, we were talking about this before, we have like 5 minutes. Can we do one or two questions? Okay, so here's the microphone. I try to get a little more time, but if you have a question, raise your hand. I know that the first question is always hard, so we're going to skip it and go to the second question.
Does anybody have a question?
Raise your hand with the question. Of course, it's way back there. Yeah, make him run. Go all the way back there. Go, go, go. Next question needs to be from over here.
All right, here we go. Meet me halfway. Come. Where's my, I was going up there. I didn't see your hand. Question.
Go.
What was your favorite case?
My favorite case.
Case
I had a case
tried.
from 1979. That is my favorite case. It's called, what is it called on Dateline? I forget what it's called. It's a 2-hour episode, and it's called The Wire. The Wire. You can Google it. It's called The Wire on Dateline. It's an unusual case because the killer used a strangulation device called a garrote. Go.
How many cases do you go through in a year?
It takes forever to do a cold case. So I try to do one case in trial every year. But I'll open a case, that 79 case, I opened it in 2003. We wrote the first search warrant in 2007. We arrested him in 2009. We convicted him in 2014. So from 2003 to 2014 for one case. But you're working a bunch of cases simultaneously. So, go.
How many Dateline episodes have you been on?
6. 6 episodes. Oh, good. See, this is what I told you. Raise your, now, somebody in that far corner has to raise their hand next. Go.
What was your longest case?
That was probably my longest. That 11-year case was probably the longest case. But all of them are in that 8 to 12-year range. It's stupid, but that's just the way it is. Heck, you arrest somebody, it might take you 2 years to get to the preliminary hearing and another 2 years to get to trial. They're not in a rush, the defense. They want more time.
What was your urge to become a detective?
What was why to become a detective? Yeah, I think largely because I watched my dad do it. And, okay, I'm going to tell you this. This is the last thing I'll say before you go. I have a lame reason to be a detective, okay? I'm going to give you my lame reason. Here it is. I was working in an architectural firm in Santa Monica. And my wife and I were together about 9 years at that time. And I looked around the office, and I didn't see anyone who looked like our marriage. Marriage is the highest priority to me. I love marriage even more than I love my wife. Priority. And I looked around that office, and I didn't see anybody. I went to visit my dad. It was a Thanksgiving day. He was a sergeant on the job about 28 years at that time. He's watching TV in his office. He's watching football games on Thanksgiving Day. I said, what are you doing here on Thanksgiving Day watching football games? He has 6 kids at home, my siblings. He's like, dude, I can't watch it at home. I can't get any peace at home. I wanted to work today so I could watch the games. I said, are you kidding me? He says, no. I said, okay, Dad, just tell me. I always wondered, how much vacation do you get? I wasn't raised by my dad, so I didn't know. He says, well, I don't know. Like, I put my days off together. No, I don't care how you do it. How many weeks off a year do you get? He said, I don't know, like 12. I said, you get 12 weeks off a year? He said, well, I gang stuff together to do it. I went home and I told Susie, I'm in the wrong profession. And I joined the police department for that lame reason. And God, I wasn't a Christian yet, and God still used it because somehow through all of this, I learned the process that I actually ultimately used to become a Christian. So when you think that God has got you in some weird place and you're wondering why you're there, trust me, he ends up redeeming all of it. I have a degree in the arts. What am I going to do with a degree in the arts in law enforcement? I spent a lot of it building presentations for juries. So that's what we do now. We're building presentations for you guys. That's it.